Part 2, Chapter 6 goes into visible or visual manifestations of spirits, theories of apparitions, and hallucination. This is on page 106 of the Medium's book. Of all spirit manifestations, the most interesting are those by which the spirits are able to render themselves visible. And so they're asking the spirits information about this. 1. Can spirits render themselves visible? Yes, especially when you are asleep, but there are times you will see them awake, though this is less common. So when we're looking into who we're dealing with as a spirit, either in dreams or when we're awake, the principles of discernment apply. Just because we're in the dream realm, really makes no difference, other than more of your own subconsciousness and your own mind processes and fears are going to be active. Constantly seeing spirits, like 24/7 or all the time, is extremely rare. It's usually not that as frequent, even for people that do regularly see spirits. And of course, these abilities can become stronger in your development. Remark: while the body decomposes, the spirit disengages itself from its material bonds. It is now more free and now can see other spirits who it enters into with communication. A dream is like the state. So it's saying that our spirit is now more free from our body, and then therefore we can more freely talk to spirits than we can when we're in our material body, because our eyes are a bit more open spiritually in the dream realm. But they're generally going to talk about when the seer, they're saying, is awake. Do spirits manifest themselves to the sight belong to one class rather than another class? No, they belong to all classes, higher spirits and lower spirits. Have all spirits the power of manifesting themselves visibly? Yes, but they don't always have permission or want to. When spirits manifest themselves, why do they do this? It depends on their nature. Their motivations can be good or bad to show themselves. Why do you assert that permission may be given to if their motivation is bad? In such case, the apparition is permitted as a trial for those to, or test to those who they appear to. The intention of the spirit may be bad, but the result may be useful. So, for example, people who are mediums, we often go through many trials, and usually when we're younger and we don't have someone to mentor us, then this will make us realize that we have this gift, because our gift is meant to be used to better ourselves and also other people and help other spirits. So that is one reason that is allowed. 6. What's the object or motivation of spirits showing themselves when they are evil? They desire to frighten or sometimes take revenge. Why do spirits come and show themselves when they have good intentions? To console people who miss them, to prove that they exist and are still near you, to give good counsels and wise advice, and sometimes to ask for help for themselves. What harm is there if you permanently saw spirits? Would this not remove doubts from the minds of the most non-believers? Men would take from spirits their freedom of action. So we upon the earth go about what we're supposed to be doing and walking our spiritual path, making our own decisions. And if we knew that these spirits were around all the time, possibly then we would act differently, and that's not why we're here. Or we would then also misuse spirits possibly and try to profit off them. And don't worry about people that don't believe in spirits, etc., because God's looking after them anyways. God is well done. He knows what is good for us better than we do. If it's not good for us to see spirits all the time, then why is it permitted in some cases, or why can some people see them? It is to give you some proof that all does not die with the body, and the soul preserves its individuality after death. This passing glimpse is afforded enough to give you proof to attest of the presence of friends near you, but is attended with no permanent inconvenience. Also, I'd like to add here individuality after death, retaining the personality after death. This only happens for a period of time. There's a lot of variables that go into that, but eventually we kind of get recycled and we don't exist. Our personality, or we do not exist. Our soul does, but who you think, like I am if you knew me, that would not exist eventually unless I was able to make myself powerful in this life, or if there was, like, say, veneration and stuff after I died, because there's sort of an energy source needed, and in the whole process of us incarnating. In the spirit world, are they more advanced than our world? The nearer man approaches his spiritual nature, the more easily he enters into the conscious relationship with spirits. It is the grossness of the material world and our physical body which renders the perception of ethereal beings more rare and difficult. Is it reasonable to be frightened at the apparition of a spirit? Anyone who sees a spirit must know that they may be just as or less dangerous than a person in the flesh. Spirits are just people. They go around everywhere, and know that even if you don't see them, they are at your elbow. If a spirit wishes to hurt you or lie, they can do it without showing themselves, and with greater certainty when unseen. He is not dangerous because he is the spirit, but only because they may subtly influence and exercise over your thoughts in turning you from the right path and urging you to do evil. So it's more common that they act this way by trying to influence you, and especially when they're not seen, is a little bit more nefarious than them showing themselves. Then they're going to be a little bit upfront. That doesn't mean that a spirit that shows himself is not going to be evil. It just, it's a little bit more sneaky and a lot more common for them to just try to influence us, to provoke our weaknesses or bad thoughts, etc. And then we wouldn't even know that they're around. People who are afraid when they're alone or in the dark rarely understand the cause of their fear. They cannot tell you what they are afraid of, but they may be afraid of meeting with spirits. However, we should be more afraid of meeting with a man on the street, because a man on the street is more dangerous in the flesh than after his death. They can be more physically violent, I guess, as well. You can enter into a conversation with a spirit when they show up. They can talk to you with articulate sounds like a living person, but more frequently they speak to you through your mind, or psychically there is a transmission of thought mind to mind. When spirits appear with wings, do they have wings in reality, or are these only symbolic representation? Spirits have no wings. They have no need of them, because From their spiritual capabilities, they're able to transport themselves everywhere. They can assume any appearance they choose according to the effect they desire to produce on the person to whom they show themselves. Sometimes they appear in ordinary clothing, sometimes in flowing drapery, sometimes with wing and etc. of attributes of the category of spirits or abilities that they may represent. I'll also add here that they also will appear how we can understand them, so according to the person's level of understanding, or how the spirit wishes to present themselves. Are the people we see in dreams always those they seem to be? They almost always are when they come find you during your sleep. I'll also add here that because spirits can change their appearances, they are not always. They can assume fantastic appearances to amuse themselves, but there are some things they are not permitted to meddle with. So if they were going to imposter themselves and appear as, say, a loved one who had passed, they would have to probably have permission to do that. Thought is a form of evocation. So when we think of a spirit more often, or a person who's passed, or who we love to see again, why is it that they may not appear to us, while on the contrary, people we may see more constantly, or people who are indifferent to us, or people we never think of? Spirits do not always have the power to manifest themselves to your view, even in a dream. Notwithstanding your desire to see them, there are causes which are independent of their will for them to do so. Often this is a trial, and people who you are indifferent of, maybe you do not think of them, but maybe they think of you. Besides, you may have relations with people in past lives or in the world of spirits that you do not have conscious knowledge of. A host of acquaintances, old and new, some you have no memory of during your waking hours. Oftentimes spirits come at the moment of their death, when we have no idea that that the person has died. Horses have been found to rear up and refuse to go near presence of apparitions of spirits, which frighten their riders also. I mean, horses are sensitive to human emotions, but these visions occur frequently during illness and just as frequently in perfect health. But the material bonds, or our physical body is kind of, we're always dying, but when we're sick, it's a bit, our body tie is a bit more relaxed, and the weakness of the body lets the spirit go around more free, so it can enter into communication with other spirits. And I have to agree with that. Spirits get you ready when you're in the process of dying. That's why it is also important not to die violently, or because our body's not used to loosening ourselves from our mortal coil. But also I've had experiences with astral projection and such after a night of drinking too heavily when I was younger, and I can see being overtired, etc. I can see how this is true. Spontaneous apparitions appear to be more frequent in some countries than others. Is it because certain peoples are better endowed than others for seeing manifestations? I'd have to add that culture probably has something to do with it, an acceptance of these phenomenons, and it does occur equally all over the world, but there may be distinctive characteristics according to the peoples to which they occur. For some nations, for example, where writing is in little use, you may not find writing mediums. Otherwise, they may be more plentiful. Again, noises and movements are more frequent than intelligent communications, because they are least sought after, and they are more lower spirits are more common, basically, and their elevation is more like our earth, so that's why they're more common to have those manifestations. How is it that apparitions generally take place during the night? Is it owing to the effect of silence and darkness on the imagination? It is for the same reason that you see stars during the night and you do not see them during the day. It's saying that a strong light decreases the spirit of a slight amount of force or energy, but it's an error to suppose that night has anything to do with the matter. Investigate those who have seen apparitions, and you will find that the greater number of them have occurred during the day. I'm going to disagree with that. In my experience, I've had greater interactions during the night, and like this book has already said, there has been greater interactions during our time of sleep, which generally also takes place during the night. But if you slept during the day, I'm assuming that you would have the same amount. And I think it is due to the effect of our subconscious and the effect of night and the correspondences with that, and also hours of the day. But that doesn't mean that they can't appear during the day as well, or have some sort of manifestation during the day. We're usually busier during the day, and we don't really pay attention to many things as much. It's saying that apparitions are much more frequent than is generally supposed, but people don't talk about them because they're afraid of being made fun of, and other people just brush them off as illusion, or I didn't really see that. If you think about how many times you might have seen something out of the corner of your eye and just kind of brushed it off. It's saying that certain localities, people are more predisposed to have belief or have acceptance of these occurrences, which lends to them understanding or believing in them more, or discussing them more. It's saying in sparsely peopled regions, so in areas that are more rural, areas where there's less people, you might have a greater cultural knowledge or amount of culture than somewhere like more modern in the cities. But it's also saying the effect of nature, the moaning of the wind through the trees, the roar of the sea, the mountain, the echoes, shapes of clouds, shadows, mirages have effect on the mind. And then people, that's partly where, even though there's truth in mythology, they will recount things that they may not necessarily have seen, but along with fiction is the reality that these things do occur. And in a more natural setting, it makes sense that we would have more interaction with spirits of natural place as well, because man-made objects and areas, even though humans can be associated with it, you're going to have less, maybe possibly other type of spirits. Does the seeing of spirits take place only in the normal state, or only when we're in trance or ecstasy? It can take place under perfectly normal conditions. Nevertheless, people who see them are often in a peculiar state, bordering on trance, which gives them a kind of second sight. Do people see spirits with their eyes? They think they do, but in reality it is their spirit or own soul that sees, or they see energetically, because you can see spirits with your eyes closed. And again, we can see spirits in our dreams, etc. And our physical eyes are at rest. How does a spirit make himself visible? As in other manifestations, by employing properties and the energies of the perispirit, and the energy can undergo modifications at the will of the spirit. Can the spirit make himself visible, or can it only be manifested by the perispirit? They can only manifest themselves with the aid of their perispirit and a medium's perispirit. And that's how they can appear with no other light source, whether in the light or in the dark. Is it by the, like they're saying, condensement, or like they make the energy body or the perispirit more material to make themselves visible? Condensation is not the right word, but rather it approximates the idea. They do something to it to make it perceptible to incarnated humans. Our spirits, are we able to touch and feel spirits physically? In their normal state, you could not, but they can make themselves felt on purpose and leave traces of their presence. They can make themselves tangible for a short period of time, which proves that there is something material in common between them and you. Are all people able to see spirits? Yes, during sleep, but not when awake. In sleep, your soul sees without any intermediary. While you're awake, it's influenced more or less by your physical body. This is why the conditions are not the same as when you're awake as when you are asleep. Where comes the faculty of seeing spirits when we are awake? The faculty depends on the person and the greater or less degree that an easiness that the fluid of the medium can combine with the energy of the spirit. Therefore, it's not sufficient for the spirit just to desire to manifest themselves. It's also necessary that they find the required aptitude by the person and their perispirit for which he wishes to be seen. Can this faculty be developed by exercise? Yes, like all other abilities, but it requires some natural ability, as well as it's better to wait for natural development for fear of overexciting the imagination. A general and permanent sight of spirits is exceptional and is not a normal state of humanity. Is it possible to see a spirit by summoning them to appear? Sometimes, but very rarely. Apparitions are almost always spontaneous. To evoke with authority, you must have a special ability. Can spirits render themselves visible in any other form than human? Yes, but they almost always do appear as human. That's to say, human spirits, I'm guessing. Unless in cases where a spirit purposely assumes, unless they appear as something else, let's say. They can produce flames, they can produce lights. Someone else the other day was talking about spirit orbs, as some sort of mirage or emanation of the perispirit. Sometimes I see like sort of like a white smoke sometimes as well. They're talking about will-o'-the-wisps here, and that's basically the lights that you see in the forest, which sometimes is attributed to fairies and can either guide a human or trick them and get them lost, usually in the forest. It's saying that the cause is well known, but doesn't get into how. It's getting into some kind of phenomenon here. The blue flame seen on the head of Servius Tullius when a child, fable or reality. I'm not familiar with the story, but they're saying it's true, and then they're saying it was a guide who desired to warn his mother. The mother was a medium who saw the child's spirit guide in this manifestation of a flame. All seeing mediums do not see with the same power or degree of vision, just like writing mediums do not all write the same thing. Whereas this mother saw only a flame, another medium may have seen the entire spirit or the spirit's body. Could spirits present themselves as a form of animal? This may happen, but is usually only inferior spirits who assume such a form. They're saying that these are called visions. Sometimes it's a retrospective view of the past. We're seeing the past. Sometimes it's objects actually present or absent, seeing the present. dreams may be allegorical, metaphorical, or symbolic. Maybe warnings or wisdom and advice to us, either to the lower spirits or imperfect spirits. More imperfect spirits will do it to lead us into error, or to flatter our passions, to work on our weaknesses, our own faults that we already have. Interpretation of dreams is not really what spiritists view spirit communication in our dreams as, that it's not necessarily needed. Spirits can appear diseased, maimed, lame, humpbacked, wounded, or scarred if they consider this necessary to their identification. They're saying Aesop, Aesop, would show themselves with a humped back and a traditional costume. With the head, trunk, and arms are always defined, the lower limbs could be less clearly shown. And the apparitions rarely walk but seem to glide around like shadows. Their costume generally consists of drapery terminating in long floating folds. Their hair are wavy and graceful. At least the usual appearance of spirits who are less terrestrial or lower. But ordinary spirits will have more personality, have more clothing that are correct to their time period. They may be holding objects that they once worked with. So a warrior may have armor, a learned man may have books, an assassin may have a dagger, etc. They're trying to say that spirits who are higher are more beautiful, serene, and noble. I don't know if I mean, there's exceptions. I don't necessarily 100% agree with this. Whereas degraded spirits have fierce and bestial expression. They may show traces of crimes they have committed or punishments they have endured. I mean, I'd say be careful of just going on visual alone when you're discerning spirits, for sure. There's a lot more into it to try to see if it's a lower or higher spirit or who is communicating with you. Spirits may be see-through, generally observed like this. They could be coming and going, entering the room or leaving it, moving around, listening to conversation. They may be more active with what is going around them, around the humans they're around. They may approach a particular person, suggest ideas, try to influence them, or console or comfort them if sorrowful. Others are scornful or mocking, pleased or disappointed according to the results they achieve or how they're trying to influence us. That mediums can help other people see into the spirit world. Sometimes spirits will appear more solid, almost making us believe that there's a real corporeal person in a physical body before us. They can make this apparition more tangible or physical, meaning we can touch the spirit, we can handle it, we can feel the same resistance and the same warmth that we would feel in a fleshly body. But this does not stop it from vanishing in an instant. Tangibly feeling an apparition, they're saying, is rare. But if they touch us, that seems to be more how we can feel them rather than us feeling them. The perispirit is normally invisible, like a bunch of energy that we never seen. For example, we don't see the energy coming off of cell phone towers. But then energy, how it can change states, so from a gas to a liquid to a solid. And this changes by the will or the mental effort of a spirit, or the concentrated effort. And there needs to be enough energy, again, from the medium or the person for the spirit to affect the transformation of their perispirit. There are probably other conditions and things that we don't know as mediums in this emerging science to how this all takes place. A spirit can go through anything material. No enclosure can shut out spirits. They can visit the prisoner in the dungeon as easily as they can appear to someone in the open country. Seeing spirits is neither new nor rare since ancient times to modern times. It's very common to visit their family or friends at the moment that they die, before or shortly after. A very common one that I've heard is in their people's dreams, or they dream that they got a phone call from somebody. People have tried to make all kinds of explanations, like it's just something in somebody's eye. The perispirit is the foundation of all spirit manifestations. It helps us to understand the action of spirits on matter, the movement of inert bodies, the means of production of audible, visual, and tangible phenomenon. And then now it's going to get into other types of phenomenons here. They're ruling things out. They're saying it's not hallucinations, or not at least 100%. Even if some of it is mental illness or hallucination, whatever. But then there's like no coincidences. Like, how can someone just hallucinate that a loved one just died in the hospital and they didn't even know that they were sick, and then they found out after? Like, that's pretty coincidental, and it happens too often. There's groups of people that can witness an event, a spirit event. Also, we don't see with our physical eyes, which usually disease states are from a physical disorder, and it's been seen and occurred in healthy people who are not confused, have no problems with their memory. And that brings us to chapter 7.